right, welcome in everybody. It's going to be episode number 25 of the Monty and Murdy College Football Show. It's been quite a while since we've gotten an episode up. Almost over a month. We kind of took the month of February off. We both had a lot going on in our personal lives and just weren't able to get something scheduled up. But Monty, what's up, man? How are you, buddy?
Good. Yeah, it's been a while. It seemed like as soon as the college football playoff ended and the season ended, it was like work ramped up definitely for me, but for the both of us. So yeah, it's been a while, but good to be back.
Yeah.
Excited to talk about the playoff today.
Yeah. So today's episode, we're going to kind of drift away into more of our off-season topics. We'll usually pick about one topic a week. We're going to kind of tailor it more towards the YouTube side of things. So today we're going to be talking about college football playoff expansion. For everybody who's not aware, Ross Dellinger with Yahoo Sports, he put out a report kind of in the middle of February where it basically stated that the SEC, Big Ten, and other conferences, he had spoken to multiple, athletic directors within those conferences. They're looking at possible expansion to the playoff. I know we just got to 12 teams, but we're already looking at going. The rumor in this article is mainly 14 or 16 teams, and so he goes through and does pretty much a little bit of a selection there. For his model, they're looking at possible automatic qualifiers, extending those to the top 4 teams in both the Big Ten and the SEC, with the ACC and Big 12 both getting 2 automatic qualifiers, and then basically a 1-and-1 for the 14-team model, so 1 for that top group of 5 champ, and then 1 for an at-large, or really what they're chalking it up to is Notre Dame, is really what they're saying.
Yeah.
Should Notre Dame want it, right, or be the team that qualifies for it. I think it's technically an at-large, but that's really what it's plugged in there for. So what we wanted to do is I kind of come up with some of my own potential fixes that could go along with college football playoff expansion, try to get this to a more sustainable model. Monty, I know, has some suggestions, so we'll go through both of ours, and we'll go through both of ours. We'll break it down. We'll hit on some of the pros and cons, what I like about the model I came up with, what I don't like about the model I came up with, what Monty, likes about his model, what I don't like about his model, that sort of thing.
Mine is still very, very young, and it's very adolescent. But it's as I told you before we started recording, it's an answer, not the answer, right? So we'll talk about it. Mine, I'll preface before we get started. Mine expansion, it's 14 to 20 teams, so I'll just say that. So we'll get going, and I'll be able to explain that later.
Cool. So you want to go ahead? You want to dive into mine first? I guess we can.
Yeah.
All right.
We can. Well, I guess you did kind of already talk about the article. So yeah, I guess you can just go through yours, and we can go from there.
All right. Yeah. One thing I do want to mention on the article, Ross Dellinger, he did a lot of research that obviously went into this article, outside of just speaking to what the conference or the athletic directors, conference commissioners, what those guys are saying. He went back, did some studies on, what amount of teams would technically qualify from 2014 to 2025. The college football playoff era. What teams out of that era would qualify from each conference? For a 16-team playoff, the SEC averaged 5 teams a year. The Big Ten averaged 5.3, with the Big 12 and the ACC averaging 2.4 and 2.1. The group of 5 is at 0.36, so not even 1 there. And then Notre Dame is at 0.63. So it's whenever we went through those numbers, right, that 4-4, 2-2, 1-1, it's like they're just pulling these numbers out of thin air, right? They went back, researched it, and said, hey, this is right about where we're doing. And even with the SEC and Big Ten taking a little bit smaller share than what they would have qualified for technically, with final AP polls and all that stuff. But I guess I'll go ahead and dive in to what I think we need to do to fix the college football playoff.
You're one of many.
One of many, right? I think
everyone's got the answer, right?
Everybody's got the answer. So I'm going to give y'all my answer, right? So I believe 16 teams is the format to go to. I'll go through the list, and we can go back and touch on each one. I know Monty's going to have a lot of these in here that he hates.
We'll see.
So 16-team playoffs. I also want to eliminate conference championship games.
That's where I disagree with you right there.
All right, I want to preserve the Army-Navy game.
I agree.
I want to eliminate college football playoff bye weeks. So if you're qualified in, whether you're 1 or 16, doesn't matter. Nobody gets a bye. You're playing somebody first weekend. Seeding should be set by the best team. Eliminate that whole, hey, the top 4 conference champs, that's the 1 through 4 seed. Hey, whoever we feel the top 25 are, that should be the playoff committee's job, is seeding those top 16 teams. So they should seed them 1 through 16, and that's how they go into a typical format. 1 plays 16, 2 plays 15, same way out. I would like to see the entire first round be 8 home college football playoff games. The second round, or what we'll call the, steal the term from March Madness, right? The Elite Eight. Those be played in the 4 big bowl games. So the Fiesta, Orange, Rose, and Cotton Bowl be played there. And then you'll have the 2 semifinals and then the national championship. No bye weeks in between games. I think you only have, if you're set into a set format, you only have 2 teams that you have to potentially scout for. I think you can work that in where you'll know that first week, hey, we're traveling to this city. After that, we're going to potentially play in this bowl game. So as far as like traveling and travel coordination, hotel rooms, all that stuff, you can make preemptive moves there, or at least tentative plans should you be able to move on to the next round. And this would all tie in to the national championship being played on January 3rd, moving it way back. Whereas it's not dragging on all the way into February. And then I would also make the suggestion that we move the window portal window to January 5th through the 12th, right there before the start of spring.
So you don't have all those kids jumping into the portal.
Exactly.
The freaking, or a bowl season, but playoffs are coming around, right?
Correct. Yeah, we don't have hey, all these teams are freaking middle off season mode, and we're still trying to play it. It's like, hey, no, we're finishing out the season. National championships played 2 days after that. Hey, off season's kicking off. Everybody can enter the portal, all that stuff. So yeah, let's go back through it. Right, 16 teams. This is assuming. I'm going to go with assuming that the automatic qualifiers thing is going to be a reason, and that ties back into my first point. So say we have 4 automatic qualifiers for both the SEC and Big Ten, 2 automatic qualifiers for the Big 12 and the ACC, and then we also have the Group of 5, and then probably 3 at-larges is what you'd have for the 16-team playoff.
One of those essentially being Notre Dame, so long as they're good enough. Or I guess that's the only thing, is that Notre Dame is in all these talks about expansion. They stay independent. They're just assuming that they're always going to be good enough to make it. It's like if you give them that at-large bid, and then there's one year that somebody that's independent or just gets the at-large that's better than them, it'll be interesting to see something like that. If the playoff committee were to set something up to where it was basically like a Notre Dame auto bid kind of deal.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if they're setting it up where it's like it's shoot in as Notre Dame, but my idea is this: you can't really pencil whip somebody already into the playoff, right? So it's
which it just seems like that's what they're doing.
Yeah, it seems like that's what they're doing, but I would say it's a Notre Dame-esque team. Somebody that's an independent, or maybe it could very well be a 5th Big Ten school or a 5th SEC school, depending on the year, right?
Or a 3rd Big 12, a Cincinnati, a Baylor, something like that.
Yeah. So with that, right, assuming that we have those automatic qualifiers in, that's why I want to go ahead and eliminate conference championships games. The reason for it is you gain a week back, right? So you don't have to play that week. That week automatically becomes the bye week. So you finish rivalry week. Oh man, that's gonna get me again.
Rivalry week, yeah, that's always the hardest. Rivalry week.
Yeah, you finish that one, right? And then you go and you play Army Navy the next week, right? Because I enjoy Army Navy being its solo deal, its own thing. But I also don't think that should hinder the rest of the college football playoff schedule, right? Because right now it's conference championships weeks. Those games are all done. Army Navy, and then it's a bye week, and then you play the playoff. So I think it should be, rivalry week. And
You
then
got it there. That was not bad.
yeah, and then Army Navy, right? And then we start the playoff that following week, right after it. And then you'll play every week after that. Friday and
So
Saturday.
you're saying get rid of not Robert conference championship week, like no conference championships.
Yeah, none.
Oof,
You got four.
that, man.
So if you got
that's against the rules,
right. But what I think we need to start looking at is these aren't really
rules.
Yeah, these aren't conference these aren't these are more like NFL divisions is really how they would operate with this automatic qualifier. So if your 4 top teams are already in, what is the point of wanting 2 playing and 3 and 4 automatically getting a bye week? There's no benefit to them. All that does is hinder 1 and 2. They're already in.
Well, that's not because my theory of how I see it
Right.
is that is not that. So
right, but I'm saying if you're taking from Ross Dellinger's report, right, we're going to have 4 automatic qualifiers because really what it boils down to is the Big Ten and SEC, they're not going to want to give up their little power hold, right? That conference, Greg Sankey, the conference commissioners, they have a power hold on college football right now, and they don't want to let it go, right? And that's what they need to do on behalf of their schools. Those schools like, hey, we want an advantage. There's a reason we're playing the schedule or we're in, this conference, and that's what they're all supposed to do, right? On behalf of their conference members. So if the top 4 teams are already in, we don't need conference championship games. We can save that week, push the schedule back, because there's no point in 1 and 2 playing for the conference champion because all you're doing is making those teams have a chance to get players hurt, unavailable for the playoff, and you're not giving them an extra week of rest, which 3 and 4 already have. And it's the same thing with the Big 12, right? If they already have their 1 and 2 set, what's the point of them playing if both those teams are going to the playoff? Or the ACC. If 1 and 2 are already set, what's the point of them playing if they're already going to go to the playoff? Just give them an extra week of break.
I 100% see the argument. Mm-hmm. I was listening to Josh Pate's podcast the other day, and he brought up a good point about what should matter to the playoff. Whatever the format is, what should matter to the playoff is your conference record, right? So it brings back the importance of the conference championship because you need to make it in order to make it, right? So or guarantee a spot as if you win your conference, whatever conference that might be. But the only record that matters really to get to the playoff is your conference record. That's why, that's because the one thing that people have been afraid of. You look at the argument last year, right, with Indiana, they made it, and they went 11-1 or 10-2, 11-1, I think.
Yeah, 11-1, I think.
But
yeah, I think they were.
But they make it with that schedule, and the argument was why, as Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, whatever, why are we going to schedule these hard opponents if a team like that can just schedule those games and make it? But if you make it the conference record that matters solely, you can still, as Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss, like I said, Tennessee, whoever, they can still go and schedule Notre Dame or Ohio State or Michigan or,
mm-hmm.
Arizona State. You can schedule those games like your first 3 games of the year and then play your 9 games or 8 games, conference games. And those games, so you get the interest from the fans, right? Because you'll have Michigan, Georgia playing in Ann Arbor or vice versa, right? But they're willing to play those games because it's a tough game and it gives you the street cred, if you will, to win that game. But what really matters is if Georgia goes 9-0, 8-1, or 4-4. That's what matters. And so having the conference record matter more than the overall record. You can go 9-3, but if you're 9-0 in the SEC and then you get to the conference championship and then you get your automatic bid by winning that, you're not just in that 4. That would make conference championships matter because you would have to get to it to win to automatically get in. Because what if you have so Georgia wins the SEC, right? And then you got the loser who say now they're now 8-2, right?
Okay.
In the SEC, and then you have 3 teams behind them, say whoever in the SEC 7-2, 7-2, 7-2, It's like so you don't have they have the guaranteed 4 spots, but then it becomes tiebreaker. And rather than having to rely on that, you just, if we make the conference championship or we have a better conference record and then we win, because those top 2 they're already in. And yes, you can still make the argument like, why play it if I know I've already made it? But I mean, it could get you the better seeding in the playoff, and then that's a whole different conversation. But I think conference championships matter. But again, my system is a little different than that one. I'm just arguing for that 14 to 16.
Right. And so the biggest thing, right, there's 2 advantages to it. It does kind of build a redundancy with if it's 4 automatic qualifiers, with having conference championships, but it also, you get the benefit of getting that week back, giving it to Army Navy and saying, hey, that's y'all's week. All the other teams were set the playoff right after that. And then y'all start preparing for whoever you're facing in the playoff to host a home playoff game. Gives you that 2 weeks to do so. You move the schedule back, right? And then every week after that, you play a game, and it ends up with the national championship being played on January 3rd. Getting it back to where
Which
it was.
I like.
Yeah, I mean,
although I don't mind college, the season being as long as it can be, but that's selfishly, of course.
Right, and I think
because I don't really watch anything else besides college baseball, and then basketball. Tennessee's good.
True, but I think we're asking a lot of these players. So if we can have the ability, if we're adding potentially an additional game in the playoff, which 12 to 16 doesn't necessarily add a game, it just eliminates bye weeks. So if you're one of those other teams, it doesn't add a game for you. It just says, hey, everybody's going to play the same amount, meaning regardless of, if you eliminate conference championships and you eliminate the bye weeks and all that, everybody's playing the same amount. You're going to have the same amount of schedules. Set it up. If the SEC ever does go to a 9-game conference champion or conference games for each team, right now they're at 8. If they do go to 9, then it's like, cool, everybody's playing a level playing field. And you go about it that way. Seeding set by the best teams. I think we can both kind of agree on that. The seeding was terrible for this 12-team playoff. I think the seeding definitely needs to be looked at. It's like, hey, just because they're an automatic qualifier because they won their conference championship doesn't mean they need to be the 1 seed or the 2 seed, whatever the case may be. It's, hey, reseed them on the list.
That would be my only thing, and I ran into that issue when I was kind of trying to loosely map mine out, was how you see, because so I'll kind of spoil it. So all my playoff spots are all the conference championships. That's how you get in, is get to the conference championships. How you seed it coming out of that is where I kind of ran into an issue. Was like, okay, so the SEC champion wins, right? Big Ten champion wins. All the other how do you seed? Is the SEC champion better than this? And you could say, oh, well, it's, whoever's in the top 25 or whatever. What gets sticky is those group of 5 conference champions, if they could be unranked, right? They're like, it's like a Ohio in the MAC beats Toledo, and they're unranked, but they're 11-2 or 10-3, right?
Right.
How do they rank, or how do they seed in the playoff compared to the Sun Belt champion Texas State, unranked, but they're 10-3, right? So that's the seeding. To your point, is
tricky.
One thing that
it hangs it up. Well, so with that, I think we've pretty well discussed most of mine. We can go ahead. So walk me through your plan, Monty. What you got?
Well, like I said, mine is extremely adolescent. There's I don't have a date for the national championship like you do. I don't have certain things, but I've thought about it, and so it basically, like I said, goes. It could be basically put it as a 20-team playoff, and people are like, well, we wouldn't expand to 20 right away from 12. It's like, maybe not, but you could get to that point at some point. Okay. And mine is
20-team playoff.
And I agree with you, by the way, that I don't think there should be buys for anybody. But with this system, because it's 20 teams, somebody would have to have a buy. I don't know who yet, but somebody would, and that's something I would need to think on more. But somebody would need to have one based on how I drew up. Drew up on my little whiteboard here, the bracket, trying to figure it out. But it would be 20 teams. Somebody would have to have a buy, or some people. But it would so every single conference, Group of 5, Power 4, doesn't matter. Every single team or every single conference would have a conference championship, right? 2-2-2-2. And those are playoff games, all of them. Everybody makes it, so long as you make the conference championship. I know you said.
So you said the conference championship games
are playoff games.
Okay.
So in order to make the playoff, you have to make the conference championship. And I know you said before this that some people might not like that, and that's fine. I think a lot of people wouldn't like it, but it just for me it gets rid of it's the Power 4 with NIL and everything. They're taking over more. It's spreading the gap. Okay, well then you put your 2 best teams in your conference of all the conferences in the conference championship. Then your best team wins. Then everyone's in the playoff. Everyone's happy, right? The reason why I like that is because it gives everybody an auto bid, right? So there's no arguments about who gets what bid, who gets what at-large bid. It brings back, we kind of saw it last year, the argument against it. You saw Lane Kiffin's argument against the conference championship. It's like, why play in it if you know you're going to make it? It brings back the importance of the conference championship because in order to make the playoff, you have to make the conference championship.
Right.
In order to play the other teams from other conferences and prove yourself, you have to win your conference championship, right? So it brings the importance back. And then it gives the possibility, which is a lot of people's argument why the 14 went to the 12 team originally was so you could have a possibility of a Cinderella, right? Cincinnati was the only team to make the 14 playoff that wasn't Power 5 at the time. We saw the 12 team. We had Boise State, and I know Arizona State's Big 12, but they were kind of on the talent-wise outside looking in. They did definitely impress against Texas. But so you had Boise State make it, so you still only had one team from the Group of 5 make it in the 12 team. So obviously it didn't work the way that they wanted, and then they lost in their first round. But with this, it gives you every opportunity every single year for a Cinderella to happen. And there's no excuse against, you're not letting these teams in, this and that, because there's literally going to be at least one team from one of those Group of 5 conferences. So probably 5 teams every single year that could be a Cinderella. It's just like the at a smaller scale, but just like the March Madness tournament where you have these smaller teams making it because of the way that their seeding works. But
it's different.
Yeah.
Advanced analytics and all that stuff.
But for me, that's as far as I've gotten with it. I have to, like I said, I have to play with the tournament a little bit because the problem is when you have 20 teams, right? So you have 5 conference championships on each side. That's like the 2. That's each side, and then it goes down into the bracket. The problem is it works well if you have 16 teams, right? So you take 2 conference championships out of that. So you would basically have like 2 conferences not making it, which that would cause a whole different thing. So I'm still trying to figure out how to work a 20-team tournament. It can't, like I said, it can work. I just got to figure out who gets what by and when. Because my thing is like, okay, so say Ohio State's the number 1 team in the country and they play in their Big Ten tournament or their championship and they win. So they're still the 1 seed overall. Like they're the number 1 team in the country. So they would play in the conference championship in the playoff, which is the conference championship, and then the next week would they have a bye in the so you basically like put them out because they're the 1 seed. So I'm trying to figure that out, and I'm not saying that's the way that I'd go because to me I don't like that you're already playing in a tournament, and then you play 1 round of the tournament, and then you get to the next round, bye, and then you're in the next round. I don't like the way that sounds. So, but the only other thing that I really have to say about it right now. I would swap your Army-Navy thing. So I would actually put Army-Navy in what's currently the conference championship week. So they would play conference championship week. No one else would. They just would. And then the following week, that would be Army-Navy week. That's your conference championship week. That's the playoff.
Oh, so the playoff begins that week?
Right. So Army-Navy week now would be conference championship week, but also the playoff. And so that way you can move it up, and there's no extended, period of bye time for everybody. So you're not, like you said, so it's conference championship week, Army-Navy, and then a bye week for everybody. There's none of that. It's just you play your 12 games. Here's Army-Navy. And who knows, maybe that could be the AAC Conference Championship, which in that case they play twice, right?
Yeah.
But here's Army Navy, and then here's Conference Championship week, aka your playoff.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue that you're going to run into is, people making the arguments like, well, we wanted the expanded playoff for more teams like Ohio State and Notre Dame that made it this past year to the national championship. Not because really what you're doing is you're only saying the SEC gets 2, the Big Ten gets 2, everybody gets 2, right? Every conference gets 2,
right?
But the argument can be made is
but how valuable does that make your conference record then?
I mean, extremely valuable, but then you're also making the argument that Ohio, University of Ohio, who lost to Kentucky last year 41-6, but won the MAC, deserves a playoff spot over, let's say, Tennessee.
I mean,
you know what I mean? It's like I think you're setting up for a lot of blowouts.
Of course, you're not going to have people that are happy, but you're never going to have people that are happy. But at the same time, and again, this is an extremely preliminary thought. I'd have to put way more time into this one. I've been thinking about it for a couple of weeks, but it's harder to map out, of course. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, it's like if you are the people, because everyone up until right now, since 2014, its inception, everyone's been complaining about the lesser teams not being able to make it because they don't have the schedule. Well, you can have literally all of them make it every year with this format, but then you're gonna have people complain. Well, Ohio's not as good. They play. So say hypothetically, so Ohio makes the MAC championship, they win. So I have it set up. You won't be able to see it, but so I have all the group of 5 teams on one side right now, and then the Power 5 over here. I say Power 5 because Pac-12.
So they meet G5 meets the Power 5 or the Power 4 in the national title every year, according to how that's how that
how that is. I'm just saying that's just how I put it because I was trying to remember. No. You'd have to switch because I mean, come on.
Well, I mean, the thing is, everybody's gonna be like, you're gonna have Ohio,
win the one side, and then they play Georgia, and they obviously lose 70-0. Yeah, no, you'd have to put them, you'd have to intertwine them, but that way you would actually have, because I mean, if you were to have it this way over time, you would have a AAC champion Navy beat Big 12 champion Baylor. You would have that at some point, or a Tulane, AAC Tulane beats a Baylor, or Iowa State, or an Arizona State, or even a Texas. It could happen over time, but that way you would get them at least further, and who knows? Maybe I doubt a group of 5 teams ever going to win a national championship personally, but you can get them closer.
I mean, the thing is, it does give them an opportunity, but I mean, if I was one of those schools, like, I'm a fan of Oklahoma. If I was in Oklahoma sitting in the SEC, I'm like, well, damn. Why don't I just go play in the freaking MAC and go win that? I got.
But it evens the playing field.
You know what I mean? No, it's like their path to the. It's like look at Oklahoma's schedule this year. They got to play possibly 7, 8 top 25 teams that are going to be in the preseason top 25. It's like the MAC doesn't have it. Nobody on that MAC side has anything even similar. They may play one top 25 team, and they're expected to lose it.
But that's the thing is, like, of course, everyone's going to have some kind of complaint for everything that, no matter how this system ends up being, there's always going to be complaints. The complaint for a while from a lot of people was that the playing field wasn't level anymore because all these Power 4 teams. This is like, that is, if you want the recruiting to matter more at these group of 5s and make it even, then you give them the opportunity to win a national championship every year. Then all of a sudden, my team has a chance of actually making the playoff every year. Then you get boosters boosting. You get people buying into the program again, and you get kids wanting to go to your school because they know they can have a real chance of making the playoff. Mm-hmm. So that is what you're doing. You are leveling the playing field back. You're giving more power back to the group of 5. Of course, my system will never happen. Because the Power 4 teams, they lose their power.
Yeah, they won't allow that.
But this is what people have claimed, fans, the real fans, not casuals, have claimed to have wanted the past 11 years, with NIL and the transfer portal and the Power Four always made it like, the Power Four has so much. You're just creating the separation. Okay, well, then even it out. But like I said, nothing's ever perfect.
Nothing is ever perfect. But I think that is going to wrap it up for our college football playoff expansion discussion. Let us know in the comments which college football playoff. Obviously, we can agree that Monty's probably isn't going to ever occur because the guys with the money are never going to let that happen. But let us know as college football fans which playoff model you would want, or any suggestions that y'all may have. We can all come up to this together. Hopefully, we can maybe come up with a solution just for them to go completely something else. So, I mean, it really just let us know what y'all think, whose playoff model y'all prefer, just as a true college football fan. With that, we forgot to plug our favorite plug here, so I'm gonna go ahead and do it right now. We are a part of the SportCoin network. SportCoin is a sports network that helps fans find content while helping content creators grow. Tired of listening to the same voices on big networks? Break away from them and find new sports content just like this podcast. You can check them out on https www.sportcoin.network. Other than that, man, that's about all I got. Monty, you want to say anything on the outro of the show?
Go get you some SportCoin, man, and believe in the hype of the 20-team playoff.
Believe in the hype. I think that is a motto that surrounds all programs with spring football. So with that being said, y'all, thanks for tuning in to another episode, and we'll catch y'all hopefully next week on the Monty and Murdy College Football Show. Peace!